Tonight on NewsWatch, what went wrong? Investigators digging for answers from that terrifying, deadly plane crash in San Francisco.
Plus, Islamic agenda, how the Muslim Brotherhood is working to infiltrate the West.
And it's one of the most dangerous journeys in the world, why thousands of immigrants risk their lives to travel to Europe. All this and more tonight on NewsWatch. Relatives of those injured or killed in the deadly Asiana Airlines crash are on their way to the United States. Good evening. I'm Mark Martin.
And I'm Wendy Griffith. Among the relatives are the parents of at least one of the two girls killed in that crash. Police had to push media out of the way as the mother and father of victim Wang Linjia made their way through the airport there in China. The father told reporters they feel terrible at the loss of their daughter. Meanwhile, as CBN's Ephraim Graham reports, investigators are wondering if the crash could have been avoided.
Asiana Flight 214 was coming in much too slow for a landing. Investigators say crew members cried out for increased speed, but it was too late. The plane stalled just as the pilots tried to abort the landing.
A call to initiate a go-around occurred 1.5 seconds before impact.
According to new information, the pilot in the deadly crash was in training, having logged only 43 hours of experience flying a Boeing 777. An Asia spokeswoman said the pilot was flying with a very experienced co-pilot and had thousands of hours of experience flying other aircraft. Meanwhile, doctors at San Francisco General Hospital continue to work around the clock to save the injured.
Most critically injured people came right away. Some of them had burns. They had fractures, internal bleeding, head injuries, spinal injuries.
Passengers sitting in the back of the plane were hurt the worst. Among them, 35 middle and high school students from China on their way to learn English at a Christian church and school in Southern California. Both of the victims were from that group.
I knew that there was some connection to the airplane, but I didn't realize that the two of the deaths had been from the children that we were hosting. And I have 3 children, and it just struck me as a mom to think about sending my children off on a wonderful, what was to be a pleasurable trip, and to have something like that happen.
The National Transportation Safety Board plans to speak with the pilots in the coming days in an investigation that could take months. Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
The violence continues in Egypt after a weekend of protests between supporters and opponents of ousted Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi. Meanwhile, the U.S. weighs its options in the matter, not wanting to call the situation a coup and cut off aid. CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell is in Cairo and says many there question the Obama administration's role in the Morsi government.
Whether it was Tahrir Square or outside Cairo's presidential palace, millions of Egyptians stood behind what they call their new revolution.
This is one of the many anti-Morsi demonstrations taking place throughout Egypt. Demonstrators here are upset with the Obama administration for what they say is their support for the Muslim Brotherhood.
The demonstrations prominently displayed signs saying U.S. President Obama supports terrorism. He also carried signs criticizing the role of U.S. Ambassador to Egypt, Ann Patterson. They feel she and the Obama administration gave legitimacy to the Muslim Brotherhood, what they see now as a terrorist group. Michael Munir of the U.S. Coptic Association says for 2 years, the Obama administration marginalized secular leaders, moderate Muslims and Christians, while propping up Islamists.
Throughout these two years, Ann Patterson would not meet with secular leaders as much as she met with Islamists and Salafis and jihadists. And she propped them in American media and made them look like they're political operatives.
Munir and others feel the Obama administration helped Morsi maintain his power. Former Israeli ambassador to Egypt, Zvi Mazel, can't understand the U.S. support for the Muslim Brotherhood.
Something went wrong, to my humble opinion, in the White House. They just did not understand what was happening in the Middle East and especially in Egypt. And then they gave their support to the Muslim Brothers.
Many hit the streets because they feared since his election 1 year ago, Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood were using democracy to establish a dictatorship.
He became like a god. we took to the streets just to protest against this decree and saying that you will not be a dictator and this country is free.
Mohammed Suleiman is one of the young activists behind the protest. Suleiman says the Muslim Brotherhood failed to provide even the basics.
This government was disastrous. They couldn't manage the country. They couldn't provide us with the basic needs for life, bread, water.
Many Egyptians feared their country without a change would become like Iran, an Islamic theocracy. The leaders behind this revolution insist it's not a coup, but a popular uprising.
How could that be a coup? We organized this 4 months ago. We told the people to go and sign petitions to impeach Morsi.
Despite the millions in the streets supporting the new government, the Muslim Brotherhood vows it will continue to fight.
We'll continue uplifting the pressure, and it will increase the pressure on the SCAF Council and the military coup dictatorship until they recede and reinstall President Morsi back to his rightful seat.
No one can predict what will happen next, but the recent violence is one sign there may be a long, hard road ahead for Egypt. That's why many Christians here are asking for prayer for the Arab world's most strategic nation. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Cairo, Egypt.
The Muslim Brotherhood may be facing a new power struggle in Egypt, but their influence around the world is ongoing, including here in the U.S. We'll have that exclusive story later here on NewsWatch.
A Coptic Christian priest was killed in the northern Sinai region of Egypt. Father Mina Aboud Sherwin was murdered after the Muslim Brotherhood criticized the Coptic Pope for supporting the removal of Morsi and the suspension of the constitution. Father Mina was the first Christian leader killed by militant Islamists since the overthrow of Morsi, and Christians now fear they may be targeted for attacks since Morsi's supporters blame them for the recent turn of events.
Businesses have been hiring more temporary workers than any other kind since the recession ended nearly 4 years ago. The number of temp jobs has jumped more than 50%. One major reason, companies are still uncertain about the long-term strength of the economy. Others are also trying to get around the Obamacare law requiring them to provide medical coverage for permanent employees, even though that law was put on hold for a year. Texas Governor Rick Perry helped bring many jobs to the Lone Star State. However, today he announced he will not seek re-election. He told supporters he believes he and his staff have helped make Texas the strongest state in the nation.
It is my hope that tomorrow's leaders build on our legacy of opportunity so Texans born into any circumstance can have a chance to experience the great American dream. Thank you for the privilege. God bless you, and God bless Texas.
Perry did not mention another run for the presidency or anything else about his future plans.
Be interesting to see. Well, immigration reform tops the list for Congress as it heads back to work after the July 4th holiday. House leaders are not happy with the Senate bill, which they believe favors amnesty over border security. As John Waggy explains, the bill has divided Republicans.
The bill as amended is passed.
Many House GOP members don't like the new Senate immigration bill passed with the help of Republicans. And on the Sunday talk shows, they use the word concern more than once.
But my concern with the Senate bill is that they put the legalization of 11 million people ahead of security. The legalization happens first, and then the security happens second. And I think the American people are not going to stand for that.
Arizona Senator John McCain is one of the so-called Gang of 8 Republican and Democratic senators who wrote the immigration bill. He says the Senate is ready to work with the House.
And I believe that if they can come up with a bill, we would be more than eager to negotiate with them. A failure to act is de facto amnesty for 11 million people living in the shadows. I think wherever you are on that issue, there's agreement on that. So then shouldn't we sit down together and solve this issue, not only for the good of the Republican Party, but for the good of the nation?
But a large number of House Republicans are not willing to hand Democrats a political victory while passing what they see as a bad law. House Homeland Security Committee Chairman Michael McCall also used that word, concerned.
I'm deeply concerned that the effort should be bipartisan. Border security on my committee was a unanimously approved, completely bipartisan bill. My concern is that the political backdrop could be that the White House would like to see this fail in the House so that he can blame the House of Representatives for that and then try to take back the House of Representatives, and then all bets are off on his agenda.
House members heard from their constituents over the 4th of July break and met privately last week to determine their strategy. Leaders say it may be at least September before lawmakers take final action. John Waggy, CBN News.
Women seeking abortions in Wisconsin will have to undergo an ultrasound first. Governor Scott Walker signed a new law requiring it Friday, and it goes into effect today. It also bans doctors from performing abortions unless they have admitting privileges at a nearby hospital. But Planned Parenthood and the American Civil Liberties Union say the bill is unconstitutional and have already filed suit against it.
A Virginia college student spent a night in jail after buying water at a local grocery store. 20-year-old Elizabeth Daly was walking to her car with friends when 6 agents from the Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control confronted them. The National Review Online reports they thought she was a minor in possession of a 12-pack of beer. The plainclothes officers jumped on her car and drew a gun. Daly was scared and tried to flee, ending up in jail. Charges were later dropped, but no apology from the agents.
Coming up, a Muslim Brotherhood insider exposes their radical agenda. Hear how they're targeting students right here in the U.S. Islamic militants attacked a school over the weekend in northeast Nigeria, killing at least 29 students and a teacher. Survivors say the militants drenched a dormitory in fuel and then set it on fire in Yobe State. Authorities blame that violence on Boko Haram. That's a Muslim group known for other attacks in the region.
A controversial Muslim cleric is invited to the White House. Abdullah bin Bayai is vice president of the International Union of Muslim Scholars, a group that has called for the destruction of Israel and resistance against U.S. troops in Iraq. Bayai met with members of the Obama administration and posted this photo of his June 13th White House meeting on his website. Bin Bayai reportedly urged the administration to give more support to rebels in Syria. The White House confirmed his visit and said it reached out to him because he spoke out against al-Qaeda. His group was founded by Egyptian cleric Yusuf Qaradawi, the spiritual leader of the Muslim Brotherhood. Qaradawi has called for killing Jews and Americans and is banned from entering the U.S. The Muslim Brotherhood is a well-known and powerful force throughout the Islamic world.
In recent years, it's turned its attention to America and to communities here that are ripe for its radical agenda. Eric Stackelbeck recently sat down with 2 American Muslims familiar with the Brotherhood's tactics inside the United States.
Dr. Ahmed Mansour watched for years as the Muslim Brotherhood slowly laid the groundwork to seize power in his home country of Egypt. Now living in America, he worries that the Brotherhood will follow a similar playbook here.
They are, working the American community here to make it as fifth column. They wanted to take over any place they are in.
Mansour taught at Cairo's famed Al-Azhar University, where he saw the Muslim Brotherhood's ideology up close.
They believe that the world is divided into 2 camps. The camp of believers, that's their camp, and the camp of disbeliever, of the camp of war. And they have the religious duty to war the other camp.
Mansour founded the Quranist movement to present a more moderate interpretation of Islam. Over the years, it led to his imprisonment and harassment in Egypt. He was finally forced to leave the country in 2001 after speaking out against the likes of the Brotherhood.
Talk about the Muslim Brotherhood's tactics, their deception, and why they are so dangerous.
They are very cunning. They usually use 2 faces. They have 2 discourses. Discourse among them against all the people, and discourse is a very beautiful discourse for all the non-Muslim brothers.
CBN News recently sat down with another concerned Muslim who says followers of the Muslim Brotherhood have taken over mosques in the Boston area. We've disguised his face and voice for his safety.
So they want to go after the young minds
And the way they go after the young minds is either they start scholarships in high school, they bring them to a certain level of obedience. It is called tarbiyah, they have classes for them and so on.
He says once you're a Muslim brother, you're in for life.
When some young chap is ready to take the oath, he is given an oath so that he will never leave the organization and they will do anything.
He says the Brotherhood also operates on Boston area college campuses. Dr. Mansour, for one, is not surprised. He was shocked when he arrived in America and found that radicals controlled many of the mosques he visited, even in the Washington, D.C. area.
I escaped from them in Egypt and found them here. So I said to myself, oh, where can I go? To go to the moon?
The Brotherhood's influence reportedly stretches beyond the local level. There have been reports in Egyptian media that Muslim Brotherhood operatives have influence in the Obama administration when it comes to counterterrorism and Mideast policymaking. As for Dr. Mansour, he says he can't get any backing from U.S. government agencies for his anti-jihad message. Eric Stakelbeck, CBN News, Washington.
Up next, a dangerous journey through the desert and across the open seas. How thousands of people are risking their lives to get out of Africa.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes now.
Pope Francis made his first pastoral visit outside of Rome today. He traveled to the Sicilian island of Lampedusa, the main port of entry into Europe for African immigrants. He went there to pray with migrants and mourn those who have died trying. During Mass on the island, the Pope spoke out against what he called the globalization of indifference towards the cries of others searching for a better future.
CBN News has reported before on the plight of those African immigrants. Every day, thousands of them crowd tiny boats in search of a better life, and many of them never make it.
Those who do face an uncertain future. George Thomas has the story of one man's journey across the African desert and the open seas.
One hot summer in 2003, Jaro Tahir Abdul Karim, along with 28 other Africans, crammed into a 30-foot boat.
We knew it was going to be a very hard journey.
They took off from the Libyan coastal city of Tripoli, heading to Lampedusa, a Sicilian island south of Italy.
We didn't have food or water. People died on the boat, but I knew this was my only chance to escape the hell back home.
That home was life in the war-torn Darfur region of Sudan.
I left Darfur because I knew if I stayed there, I would be killed in the war. And so I wanted to make a new life.
3 days later, he landed here on the shores of Lampedusa, and within a couple of months, he made it to the streets of Rome.
I just want to live a normal life, simple and without any problems. I want to be happy.
Getting to Lampedusa wasn't easy. The route from Africa to Europe is one of the most dangerous journeys in the world.
I walked for a month from Darfur to a town in Libya. I had no papers, no documents, and no passport. I spent 2 years in Libya, working and saving money to pay someone to take me across the Mediterranean.
A journey to Lampedusa is only the final part of what is a harrowing experience.
Antonio Virgilio works for a humanitarian group based in Rome that's helping to care for these African migrants.
It begins with their trek across the African desert, which can take months. People die just trying to cross the desert.
The journey from North Africa to here on the shores of Italy takes anywhere from 3 hours to 5 days. And just in case you thought that there is an experienced captain to navigate the high seas, think again.
First of all, the boats, small dinghies, are totally unseaworthy. Then people are not given food or enough food and water. Those who steer the boats have no experience. Maybe sometimes they have never seen the sea before.
Those fortunate enough to survive the trip face the harsh realities of a new life in a foreign land.
I just got here a couple of days ago. I don't speak the language, I don't have a place to stay, and I need to find a job.
Italy and several countries conduct regular sea patrols to try to curb the number of African migrants coming to Europe.
More should be done to target those who commit the crime of people smuggling. All we can do at sea is carry out rescue operations.
But many African nations aren't keen on stopping the flow of people leaving the continent.
The truth of the matter is that African nations have very little incentive to stop the flow of migrants coming to Europe. According to the latest statistics from the United Nations, close to $38 billion sent from Europe to Africa by Africans working abroad.
I send about $300 every month to my parents back home and also to my brother. They are poor and need all the help they can get.
Karim has been in Italy for 5 years. He now works part-time with a group that's helping others like him to adjust to life in this country.
My dream is to get married, have a family, and if I get more than I need, I'd like to help my people back in Darfur.
Karim is grateful to be alive. Rarely a week goes by without him hearing about another attack in Darfur or news about another boat sinking on the open seas. Despite the dangers, the flow of African migrants continues as endless as ever. George Thomas, CBN News, Rome.
Finally today, meet a pair of ladies who aren't afraid to take a risk when it comes to spreading the gospel.
That's right. 2 Canadian women recently stepped way out of their comfort zones to raise support for Asian missionaries.
Jumping for Gospel for Asia to raise donations for bicycles.
Janine Jaubert and Danny Diaz of Ontario challenged friends to sponsor 100 bicycles for pastors in South Asia. Then they took a leap of faith. Check that out. The 2 teachers boarded a small plane for their very first parachute jump. At 12,000 feet, they jumped with their instructors for a 50-second, 7,000-foot free fall at about 125 miles per hour. When they took their jump, the novice skydivers already had pledges for 73 bicycles. 6 minutes later, they were safely back on the ground. By the end of the week, 16 more bicycles were funded. Gospel for Asia founder KP Yohanan said the donated bicycles will help pastors go farther, faster, and reach more people with a love of Jesus.
Well, that's great to hear. Good way to end the newscast. That's all for this edition of NewsWatch.
Good night.